There is something to Rebase. I can recall when I did my first Rebase in a team, I was actually scared because I've never done it before. And I can recall sitting next to the lead engineer and I was shivering. But then I figured it out and he said, okay, it's fine. You can do the force push. Well, that was me a couple of years ago. And if that is you as well, I want to explain this a bit, especially explaining this picture. Because if you don't understand this picture, you probably should. And also I'm going to give 5 things that we apply in my development company that we use on a daily basis anytime we need to make rebases that we use as a rule set. So this is also a perfect video you can share with maybe an engineer that works with you. I'm going to do this because in the end you will be able to have your team work better together and you will have a cleaner history in Git and also waste less time, especially time in merge hell. This is not an intro to rebasing. There's a really good video from this guy, Mark Howard, which I can recommend, which you can check out. So this guy explains it really well. You can just watch this video. You don't need to watch my video, but if you're interested in what this is, I'm gonna give you a quick overview now. Let's have a look at the iPad because I want to quickly sketch what a rebase is. Git Rebase, very quickly explained. Let's assume we have an empty Git repository with a commit in here, commit in there, and then you have a commit in here. And what you want to do is usually create feature branches. Let's say you create another commit, you create the feature branch here, and this is your branch feature. And now you keep coding, you add the commits as you go along. Now, what might have happened is that as you go along, this is the main branch, some other developer worked on another feature branch and they merged it. So let's say there was a merge commit here being made from another developer, let's say feature before that, B, and they basically came from here and they worked and they merged in here. Now there's a good chance that you worked on the same file. So what you want to do is you want to rewrite the history so that your branch here, your feature branch, is not coming off from this. What you want to do is that your feature branch does not come from this commit, but instead from this one. So you're going to rewrite the history and that now your 3 commits hang here and they get basically detached from there. This is a Git rebase and you stay on top of things. And now when you want to merge back into the main branch, this is going to be way easier for you to do because you already have resolved the issues here. So let me just, so the basic problems here you will have when you work on same files is that those here will have a conflict. So as you resolve the conflict early, you don't have the conflict here. So with a rebase, you're able to basically have a bit more pain earlier for merging, and later on you have an easier time bringing it back into the main branch. And now the first thing that's important for rebases is that with rebase, you can rewrite the history. That means you can select, you can determine where your commits should attach to, and you can also change the commits in itself. So you can reword them, you can bring them together, and this is what we name squashing. So if you take 2 commits and you just merge them, you bring them together in one commit. That's called a squash. What it means is that basically all the file sets from both commits, they get put into one file set of changes. And the one thing that's very important for us in teams is that we never squash something that's already publicly in the works. So let's look at real quick at our project here. It's called AnyAdmin. It's some kind of side project / SaaS we're making at one point. Okay, let's say we make a new merge request, and this is a sample. I would not do this in practice, but just to show you, new merge request from main to something else. Something else doesn't matter. We had this case at one point where one junior developer actually did this. Something like that. They just wanted to merge into deploy branch and deploy the changes. They ticked this box, squash commits when merge request is accepted. And what they didn't know is that those commits, they're not getting copied somewhere. You're not working on a copy of commits. You're working on the commits that are there. So if you do this, let's say if you merge main into another branch and you say squash, all these things here, they're getting squashed together into one big commit. You might think that's cool because we don't need it, but yes, you need it, because what will happen is, let's say we look at a file, let's say anything in here. Let's assume it's this one, the health check. This is what I did, right? This is a change from me. Here I could make a git blame. So I would actually know who wrote this line. if you squash everything down, you're lacking that info. That information is gone. Then suddenly every single code change came from one person. And that's exactly what you want to prevent, because you need the Git blame in order to have good team collaboration where you're able to ask people question, why did you write this? And you can only do this if you actually know who was the author of a certain change. The second rule of Rebase is, can you actually group the commits together logically? And I want to show you real quick this on the command line. Okay, so here's a random branch in our repository. We can do a git log. I've prepared this a bit to omit the authors. This is the history of a certain branch. And if you look at this, you will see that there are a couple of typos. So for example, this one, save state, didn't commit yesterday. So that's something that can just happen. What we believe in our company is that when you have your feature branch, you can basically do whatever you want with that. You don't need to be super clean with your commit history as long as you clean it up later. So some commit like this should not go into main. Also, you maybe want to correct some typos on the way. It's not super important, but it's nice. But apart from the typos, if you look at these files here, you see that they all touch different files. So here's for example, this doesn't make sense because we're touching the weak component for the commit dockerization. That's one exception. I would try to maybe take that out and write it again or explain why this is there. It's not perfect, but it's okay for now. But basically what it says, this does something totally different from what this does. So this is not something you can squash easily. So I would say don't squash it. Another thing we encourage is to use a tool like Fork. If you use a Mac, this is very helpful. It's an open source tool. I'm going to show you real quick. It looks like this. It's a GUI program, so you can have really a good overview of what's going on. It shows you graphically how the branches go together when you branch off. This happens here. You branch off, and when you merge, it looks like this. So you have a clear merge request. You can fold the things, and you always see a list of your branches. And what you can also do is squash very easily. Let's say you go here, you want to squash all these together. You just go interactive rebase, squash into parent, and then you can do that. And you would get this view where you can now really select what you want to have. And then you would be able to change this thing here and give it another name. 3 changes together. By the way, you would never write a git commit message like this. Git commit messages are always in command form. It's like change feature to be compatible. So you would never say something like road extension. This is not good. What you would write is write extension or add extension to X. So always when you write a commit message, always have it in a way that says, if this is merged, it will, if this is a complete sentence, if this makes sense, then you can do it. So it needs to make sense after, and that's usually command form. Great. Another thing that Fork allows is you would be able to directly rebase on a branch, interactively rebase on here, and this is actually really nice. So I can only encourage you to use some GUI tool. I mean, you can use command line if you're good at it, but sometimes I just like to rely on this tool. And probably the most important thing, something that I just violated without knowing, and this is also part of why I make this video. It slipped me, I forgot about it, and someone was using my branch for their work, and I rebased my branch, and so I screwed with their work. And I want to clarify this on this tool here because it's actually very interesting to look at and explain what's happening. So let's say you would have your main branch here, you have the first commit. We check out main first. It's a really cool tool. It's called, let me go there, it's called Learn Git Branching, learngitbranching.js.org. Okay, let's go through this real quick. Let's say we make another commit. We say git checkout branch feature. So let's say we make a feature branch, and when we make another git commit, another commit. Okay, great. Let's say someone comes and wants to use my branch now. This is what happened. Git checkout let's say extension. And git commit, they make another commit on it, great. And then what I do, I also just go I go back to my feature branch, say git commit. git commit, let's say another one. And now I say git rebase interactively on let's say main. Feature, and then git rebase I on main. And now I'm just switching these commits around. And now let's have a look what happens. Okay. So now we have created a parallel universe where we have an appendix that's not in use anymore because C5 and C6 is just stale because we moved them around in a way that we don't need them anymore. And suddenly my feature branch is here on C5. Now what happens is that the extension is now free and not depending on my feature branch anymore. So basically, if I have an important thing here that I need the X to use, this is not available to them anymore. And this is the problem that I had. So basically, they were seeing changes. They were not seeing the changes that I was making. So I told them, hey, this is my branch. I gave you these changes. It needs to work on your end. And they said, no, it doesn't. Of course, they would need to rebase back on my branch and then it works. So let's say we are the extension and we say, so in order to, this is now the way to fix it. Git rebase I to feature. And now we just leave it as it is. And we are now back on track. And depending on how many times you do this, you would always need to communicate that you actually did these changes and that you force pushed, and then that person needs to always rebase against yours. So the rule is don't rebase if someone is branching off your branch. It's just as easy as that. And then now to the final rule, always test. So that means ideally you have at least 80-20 of testing, you have enough integration tests, you have enough end-to-end tests, you do a manual test. Important to know is that a successful rebase does not mean your code works. Your code works ideally when you tested it, when the users know, when the users have the feature that works, and when your automated test suite runs through. If you have more questions about software development, send me an email or watch the next video that explains our process a bit better.